Welcome to Hazard Communications Training, presented to you by MARO. The Hazard Communications Training will provide you with information about the Michigan Right to Know law regarding chemicals in the workplace. This training material is presented by MARO in partnership with MIOSHA. This material was prepared under a Consultation Education and Training grant awarded by the Michigan Occupational Safety and Health Administration. MIOSHA is part of the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs. Points of view or opinions stated in this document do not necessarily reflect the view or policies of LARA. This training includes an overview of the MIOSHA Hazard Communication Standard Part 92, hazard communication labeling requirements, information on the safety data sheets in the 16-section format, and details of the facility-specific hazard communications program. A quiz will be provided at the conclusion of this training. In Michigan, we have specific posters that are required by MIOSHA. The first poster, the Right to Know, relates to informing the employees where the safety data sheets are located in the workplace and who is responsible for maintaining the safety data sheets. This poster must be posted within the work environment. The second poster, the new or revised SDS, is related to new or revised safety data sheets. If a new chemical is used or a new safety data sheet for a chemical that is being used is received, the chemical name must be noted on the new or revised poster for 10 working days upon receipt. So what are safety data sheets? A safety data sheet contains information that is specific to a certain chemical. Under the new HAZCOM standard, material safety data sheets are now called SDSs or safety data sheets. All SDSs will have a consistent 16-section format, and employers must ensure that safety data sheets are readily accessible to employees. Let's review the safety data sheets. Section 1, the required information consists of product identifier. This information is also used on the label and any other common names by which the chemical is known. Section 1 will also include the name, address, phone number of the manufacturer, importer, or other responsible party, and an emergency phone number. Section 2 information will always include the hazard classification of a chemical. For example, is it a flammable liquid or a flammable vapor? It will also include any signal words or hazard statements. Section 3 will always give information regarding the composition or the ingredients of a chemical. Are there impurities in the chemical or stabilizing additives? It will also include information on substances, mixtures, and all chemicals where a trade secret is claimed. Section 4 will include information regarding first aid measures. It will describe the initial care that should be given by any untrained responders to an individual who has been exposed to a chemical. Section 5 relates to firefighting measures. It provides recommendations for fighting a fire caused by the chemical. Section 6 references accidental release measures, appropriate responses to spills, leaks, or releases. For example, if there's been a large accidental spill, it'll tell you what are the best cleanup practices for this chemical. Section 7 references handling and storage. It provides guidance on the safe handling practices and conditions for safe storage of the chemical. Section 8, exposure controls and personal protection, indicates the exposure limits, engineering controls, and personal protective measures that can be used to minimize worker exposure. Section 9 includes information regarding the physical and chemical properties of the chemical. Section 10 references stability and reactivity of the chemical. It describes the reactive hazards of the chemical and the chemical stability information. Section 11 references the toxicological and health effects of a chemical. It includes information on the likely routes of exposure, for example, inhaling, ingestion, skin and eye contact. Sections 12 and 15 are not regulated by MIOSHA, and again, check with the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality for any employee training requirements for this section. Section 16 references all other information and may include information on when the safety data sheet was prepared or when the last known revision was made. In addition to MIOSHA requirements for safety data sheets, there are also specific MIOSHA requirements for product labels. This is an example of a product label. The type of required information for product labels is noted in blue. The actual statement and information will vary depending on the specific health and physical classification of the product. Required label elements include product identification, which is the name of the chemical product, supplier manufacturer identification. This is the name and address of the manufacturer or supplier of this chemical product. It also includes labels. Labels also require signal words, hazard statements, and a precautionary statement. In the past, there have been several signal words that have been used to indicate a hazard, like caution, warning, or danger. The globally harmonized hazard communication standard permits the use of only 2 signal words, danger or warning. Only one of the signal words is permitted to appear on the label based on the classification of the chemical. A hazard statement is a statement assigned to a hazard class and category that describes the nature of the hazard of a chemical, including, where appropriate, the degree of hazard. Example of hazard statements may be that a chemical is a flammable liquid or vapor, or the chemical may cause a skin irritation or cancer. Precautionary statement means a phrase that describes recommended measures that should be taken to minimize or prevent adverse effects resulting from exposure to a hazardous chemical or improper storage or handling. Labels also require hazardous chemical pictograms. Pictograms are at-a-glance type of indicators of a chemical's hazard. All hazard pictograms will be in the shape of a diamond. The pictogram will have a red frame wide enough to be clearly visible. Inside the frame is a black symbol on a white background. The symbols will represent one of 9 hazard classes. The 9 hazard classes are broken down into 3 categories: physical hazards, health hazards, or environmental hazards. Let's now review individual hazard pictogram symbols. The exploding bomb symbol. A physical hazard warns that the container holds an explosive substance, that it is a chemical hazard that can expand violently with force when subjected to heat, pressure, or shock. The flame symbol, representing a physical hazard, warns that the container holds a flammable substance. The flame over circle symbol also is a physical hazard, and it warns that the container holds an oxidizer. It is a chemical that is not necessarily combustible, but can cause or help other chemicals to burn. Oxidizers can be gases, liquids, or solids. Examples of an oxidizer would include oxygen and chlorine or bromine, to name a few. The gas cylinder symbol, also a physical hazard, warns that the container holds gas under pressure that would create a hazardous situation in the event of the cylinder bursting or having a sudden release of the gas causing it to move. This pictogram would be used with compressed gases, liquefied gases, refrigerated gases, or dissolved gases. The corrosion symbol, which also is a symbol for a physical and health hazard, warns that the container holds a corrosive chemical which is hazardous. It can eat away at metal, but also damage or destroy your skin, tissue, and eyes. The skull and crossbones symbol, a hazard affecting health, warns that the container holds an acutely toxic substance that can harm you through ingestion, inhalation, or absorption. Acute toxicity means that the substance is extremely poison and may be fatal from either a single or short-term exposure. The exclamation mark symbol, another health hazard, warns that the container holds a substance with serious health hazards. This can include acute toxicity from exposure, irritation to the skin or eyes, irritation to the nose, mouth, throat, and lungs from breathing. It also warns of potential organ damage after a single exposure and potential narcotic effects. The next pictogram warns of the chemical's long-term effects on the body. It indicates that it may be a carcinogen, which causes cancer, and may affect sexual function and fertility. It may cause birth defects or damage to specific organs from either short or long-term exposures. This symbol would also be used to indicate that the substance can damage respiratory tissues. The last pictogram refers to environmental hazards. It is not mandatory, as OSHA does not have enforcement authority over environmental issues. This pictogram indicates that the substance can have immediate or long-term hazards to an aquatic environment. Portable containers. Now that we have reviewed safety data sheets and labels, it is important to consider containers. Products falling under the scope of the globally harmonized system, MIOSHA Hazard Communication Standard, will carry a label at the point they are supplied with by the manufacturer or distributor to our workplace. This label should be maintained on the supplied container and not defaced. Should the contents of this container be transferred to a smaller or portable unit, these containers must then use the MIOSHA secondary labeling. An employer can allow workers to use secondary container labels as long as the secondary label provides the same information in either a different written or displayed format, and the label is as effective as the original label. Employees do not have to label small containers in which they pour materials for use on that shift, as long as they are the ones pouring and controlling the container throughout its use. However, if more than one person will use a container, if it will be used for more than one shift, or it's not under the continuous control of the employee who poured it, then the employee must label the secondary container with a product identification and hazard label. Please note, best practice would be to label or otherwise provide equivalent information for all portable containers. So why is secondary labeling important? Every day, many accidents occur because secondary labeling requirements are not properly followed. These are true stories. A 7-year-old Colorado boy was served a vanilla milkshake tainted with chemical cleaner after an employee mistakenly filled a cleaning bottle with syrup. The mistake occurred when one employee left a container with chemical cleaner in the sink, and then another employee later filled that container with vanilla syrup, thinking the container was clean. Another incident is when a Utah woman was hospitalized after drinking tea tainted with lye at a restaurant. In this case, an employee mistook degreaser, made up of sodium hydroxide or lye, for sugar, mixing it into the tea and causing extreme burns to the woman's throat and mouth. Another incident, a total of 28 children and 2 adults were hospitalized after drinking a mixture of water and bleach at a daycare center. Firefighters said an employee at the center was preparing water cups for the children when she accidentally poured from a bottle containing a bleach and water solution. Each of these incidents could have been avoided if secondary labeling requirements were followed. Employers must have a written hazard communications program for their workplace. In this written plan, employers must provide facility-specific instruction to employees on hazard communications. Program information must include the location and availability of the written program and a secondary container labeling system. It must include specific procedures to follow to protect employees from chemical hazards, methods used to detect the presence or release of hazardous chemicals, and specific information related to chemicals in the facility. Training must include a hazard communications training, such as the one you're completing now, and training that is also chemical specific. Chemical specific training includes a material description of chemicals, physical and health hazards associated to that chemical, detection methods, and protective measures. This chemical-specific training must be delivered in a language appropriate to the audience. This concludes the hazardous communications training. Thank you. A quiz will now follow this online course and must be taken to complete this training.